Yes. Larry. All right. Hey, welcome to Con-crete University 101. I am Dean XLB Free for this show, as well as for those who know me personally. I am Daryl H.W. Lewis. This evening, we've had several malfunctions as well as throughout the week, but we'll get into those later. So we'll start the way that we usually start with our theme music to give people enough time to check in. It's going to be a great show tonight, as usual. And I just hope you're in here with us. Send me some comments to let me know that you're on as we to show me that you're still with us. So send me your name. Let me know that you're here. If you don't want me to say it out loud, so don't say it out loud, but just need to you to bear with me for a second, and we will get right into it. I know you're watching Pop, but I'm gonna show you how to work under pressure. Okay, so and here we go. Thank you for tuning in. Let's make it happen. Con-crete University, Prison Literacy 101.
It's Con-crete University. Before you were wrong, ended up in the penitentiary. Listen up to Dean XL. Be free. And you will know before you go. Never have to see how prison can really be. Listen, learn and practice consistency. This is prison literacy. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Con-crete University.
We in the comments.
Con-crete University. Yeah.
I'm looking for you.
Con-crete. It's Con-crete University. 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 University.
Con-crete University.
Yeah.
Where you at? Show up. See you in the chat. Give me a thumbs up with your name or something. Anything. Know before you enroll. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Welcome to Con-crete University. Today is April 29th, 2026. And I am Dean XLB Free, better known to those who know me personally. I'm D or Daryl H.W. Lewis. I've been called by many different names and all different kind of stuff. But today, we'll just go with Dean XLB Free or just Daryl. Today's going to be a special show today because, like I said in the beginning, this April 29th, 2026. And today is my 57th trip around the moon. So today I turned 57 years old. So April 29th is my date of birth. I call it my Earth Day. It's the day that I've graced the planet Earth with my presence. And I would like to begin by letting you know today's show will be a little special because I had a lot of technical difficulties this year. For those in the Midwest, specifically in Kansas and Missouri, we had a tornado and we had tornado warnings and things of that nature. Well, how the computer that I was dealing with in the beginning, the one that I used for the show, it messed completely up. So we had to take it back into a surplus shop to get it rebooted and refixed and all that. and I was only able to get that back today. So on this show, we try not to make excuses. We just, keep on kicking, keep on pushing it the way that we, are built to be. And as human beings, we're built to just keep on pushing, so that's what we're going to do. So we had those mistakes earlier. And so in setting it up for today, myself and the engineer, had a few difficulties, and we had to pull in Alexis Bronson. Today, shouts out are basically going to be to my core three: Alexis Bronson, Renee Rivera, and of course, Eric Bronson. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. However, so we had some technical difficulties. As you see, we started off a little bit late and everything because me not being a, tech savvy person, I erased a whole bunch of stuff and had to start some stuff all over with. But hey, I'll get used to it, and we pray that it continues to get better. So here we are with Con-crete University. I have to, like I said, channel some of the shout outs for today. There's a lot of people. I've only talked to a few people this week, but I was unable to get a lot of the comments and everything on the computer like I usually do. Of course, I could use my phone, but I haven't been talking to a lot of people this week to get feedback or what have you. But there was a question and a thought that I left you with last week. So if you were there last week and you were part of our get down last week, the question was, what would you do personally in order to save a child's life? And so I asked asked people over the airs that question, excuse me, and maybe one or two people did, speak with me this week, and they said, try to tell me the things that they, would do to save a child's life. And if that's the case, there's some conversation that could be had. Send your questions. I spoke to those people and I said it was great for us to have a conversation about that, but I'd like for you to send your questions into the live stream so that I can just bring them out to you personally, give you a shout out if that's what you want, if that's what's, not necessarily that's what you want, because, a lot of people like to stay behind the curtain. And I totally understand and I totally agree with that in many ways. But if you have any comments about the question from last week, again, which was, what would you personally do in order to, save a child's life? And the reason he asked these questions is because, again, as I say about Con-crete University, this is just not about getting followers, not about, being on live stream, being able to just jibber jabber and talk. I want to build a movement off of this. And so when I get feedback from you, and I get people that come in and say, this is what I would do for children, or that, I'm going to call you to the carpet someday, as this thing continues to grow, as, I've said it many times before as well. I have people that are out in the world that are really doing stuff, as far as with the youth, as well as children in school. I have, even substitute teachers that are a part of this thing. But eventually there's going to come in a time where we're going to have to put together an agenda in order to put forth some work and some effort to detour these children from going to Con-crete University. But I might also add, as I was speaking about, a couple of weeks ago, we did a show just based on those from 25 and under. And I have gotten some comments from people saying, okay, 25 and under, that's cool and all that. But, young fools turn into old fools. And so with that being the case, remember, this is for any age, any demographic, any person that might be in some type of crisis situation that could lead them to prison. One of the things that I have greatly learned and understand is that a lot of times when you don't have options, when you don't know anything other than left or right, up or down, when those are your only two choices, a lot of times young men and young women choose, to do what it is that they need to do in order to survive versus just, being impoverished or being, without. And sometimes those decisions lead you into incarceration. So if you don't really know your choices, if you only know you have a left hand and right hand, don't know that you can use your other senses and your feet, the other five senses that you have, if you don't know those things, then a lot of times we get punished for what we don't know. So my quote for this week is, as we move forward, since this is, my birthday, the quote for this week is one of the quotes that I usually use when I'm sending salutations to people for their birthday is, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. It's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. Say it thrice. It's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. And so we can send comment about what you think about that quote as well. But basically what I mean by that is many times we count these years, we say, hey, I'm a year older, I'm getting older, I'm getting, closer to that time to, for the casket to drop or what have you. But that's, doesn't necessarily have to be true. we hear people a lot of times say, well, you're only as old as you think that you are and everything. And I come to believe that, one of the things that they say about prison, since this is a show that's, about incarceration, about prison, is they say that men that go to prison are preserved. But a lot of times the men are preserved in there, not because they're eating, just because they're eating healthy, because a lot of times we're not eating healthy in there, but not because they're exercising, not because they don't have anything other to do but to walk around. But, when you get in survival mode inside of a prison, a lot of times your mindset is only about, I got to get out. I got to live through this situation in order for me to be able to get out to my family or whatever life is about for you. So the mindset of thinking is that I'm going to go, I'm going to continue, I'm going to move forward or whatever. In many ways that preserves you. And so we're going to get into what holidays and what birthdays are like for a person that is incarcerated, so we can get a better understanding of that. So the only shout that I truly do want to give out, now that I think about this, is I want to give out a shout out to my cousin Jamal Mabry. He turned, I didn't say his date because he might have tell my people how old I am and everything, but he's younger than me. So his birthday was on April 16th of this year or what have you. And, me being so busy or whatever, I just, overlooked it and didn't reach out to him on that day. So I want to say to you, Jamal, whenever you get a chance to look through this and everything, man, I appreciate you very much for all that you've done since I've been out. Mind you, Jamal is the person that bought me my very first pair of Air Jordan tennis shoes. So I know that you say, well, man, nobody get into all that. Nobody care nothing about, the material things that you got. But for all these years while being incarcerated, prior to me going to prison, Michael Jordan hadn't started winning championships. So it's not that he wasn't somebody, but his Air Jordan tennis shoe at that time was, nothing. So for me to be inside that place all these times and people come in, they talk about, I got these Jordans, man, these Jordans. I never had a pair of Jordan tennis shoes ever in life. And so it wasn't about, saying, hey, I got some Air Jordans or I got this material thing. When I got out, my relative Jamal, he said, man, you've never had a pair of that. So he took me shopping, got me some, what he calls, what'd you call it, Jamal? He calls it athlete wear, not leisure wear, but athletic wear. But anyway, it's a little cool name that he used for it. I'll maybe share it with you next week or something like that. But, just the fact of a person missing out on so many things and not having things. Again, it wasn't just about having the thing, but I got a pair of, my first pair of Jordans from him. And, I still have them to this day. They're my favorite pair of tennis shoes, and I keep them clean just like he taught me to. And so that's that about that. But happy birthday to Jamal Mabry. That's my cousin and everything. Appreciate all that you've done for me since you've been out. So those are the only shouts that I'm going to be to do today, because I really want to get into this life situation. Remember, the phrase is, it's not about the years in your life that count. It's about the life that's in your years. So with this being the case, the numbers, it's not about the numbers. We had, Aaliyah singing, age ain't nothing but a number, getting down ain't nothing but a thing. So age ain't nothing but a number. So continue to tell yourself that you're younger, continue to do young people things, whether it just be dancing, whether it be walking, whatever the case may be, but don't allow this stigma that people put on you about old age. And see, one of the things that I believe that the rift between the younger generation and the older generation is, some of the older people get to see the younger people living out their youth, living out the things that they like to do, and maybe with some things that maybe the elder people may have missed out on, or something that they could have done better than the way that they use, and it causes some type of frustration. I used to watch guys that inside the prison, they would play basketball and they were good with the sky hook. See, during our generation coming up and everything, watching Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, some of the greats doing the hot sky hook in basketball, as years and years went on, as we got into this 2000 and we got into the Allen Iverson era where, the crossover became the thing, the sky hook slowly faded out. I mean, even if you watch basketball today, we got the NCAA stuff going on. We also have the NBA going on or what have you and everything. Just pay attention to how much the sky hook is used. So, you have crossovers, you got Euro steps, you got all these different other little things that have been introduced into the game. But like I said, after the whole Allen Iverson era or what have you, things started shaking up, switching up. So the big man, as is really pretty much, they still have the big man, but, back in my day or back in those early 80s and early 90s, the centerpiece. I mean, if you go to talk about the Chicago Bulls, Bill Cartwright, those guys that are right down there in the center, that was very important. So not to ramble on, but the point that I wanted to make with that is, just like when that sky hook came, started to fade away, And the older men that used to dominate the basketball courts back in the days when we first got into prison, when I first got into prison, they started to slowly fade out. So when this new Euro step and these new little, games of basketball playing, started happening, even the big three from Ice Cube, we kind of started moving his way in where guys were saying, well, if I make it from here, it'll be a 3-pointer. If I make it, we never played that way. So when I go back to the rift between the new generations, new generations, them being our future, they bring in some new stuff to the game. And so a lot of times the older heads see that new stuff coming into the game, whether it be something that could be beneficial to them, or it could be something that they just like. A lot of times we'll disregard that or discard that because it's not the way that we used to do it. So to the older people, we have to get out of that mindset when we're talking about the young generation. I don't like how they do things. Don't knock it till you try it, because some of the things that they do may be just a little more, again, more to our benefit or even more fun than the way that we used to do things. But then it also, on the other side of that, when you look at the younger generation, young guys, you got pioneers, you got men that, laid the whole basketball thing down. Pay attention to some of the stuff they do, because it's been a couple times, you can talk to Scrap the filmmaker and some of the other guys I played basketball with. I mean, I wasn't out there so much, like every single day, like a lot of them. Well, in my earlier years I was, but, I had to start reading books and studying and doing stuff like that. But, it's been several times and I had them little guys on my hip and I came through that hook shot and went in, damn, OG, where'd that come from? But that OG, that hook shot still works. So moving right along from the sports athletic parts of it, I was just using that as an analogy to say, old times can still be good times, just like new times can still be good times. So please remember, it's not about the years in your life that count. It's about the life in your years. We have to learn to live a little bit. They keep telling me over and over in the show, man, calm down, be cool, relax, and just enjoy the show. And this is what I'm trying to do right now. But some of the issues that happened early on, kind of got me a little rattled, but we'll get right back into it. So again, happy birthday to my cousin Jamal. So with the question last week about what we would do to save a child's life, I always have to think back to, the fact that I have children and everything, and anything that I would want for my children, I would want for someone else's children. They have a saying in Islam, an Islamic saying that says, none of you truly believes in God until you wish for your brother or your sister what you wish for yourself. And I've said this before as well, but it's one of the life lessons that, stuck with me, because if I truly want the best for myself and don't want the best for someone else, this is what makes up the world now. Everybody wants to be in I can't say everybody, but many people get into this individual lifestyle, especially in the streets. There used to be a time when people ran together and did, things that are, not supposed to be good things. They ran together, and after they got to finish doing what they did, they divvied it up. I mean, there used to be a time when you could actually, and even though it's like illegal gambling, but there used to be a time we sit back and think that, people could go and shoot craps or shoot dice and everything. And when you lost what you lost, you lost what you lost, and it was over with. But nowadays you got situations, and I'm talking to those with, the true hustlers. Now you get to a day you can't even really shoot dice because somebody's going to say, hey, you need to stay here until I get my money back. And then that turns into a big thing. And then you have life lost because of something, although it is illegal, something that, used to be a time where you can just play, get your money, lose your money, go home. Great. So I know some of my analogies might be off a little bit, but, just bear with me and try to understand what I'm saying. It's about living. In prison, you just live, but in prison, pretty much you just survive. It's all about surviving. Can I survive? Can I make it through this day? But living, being able to live versus just existing on the planet is when you have some kind of freedom. And so when it comes to freedom, as you know, there's a tinge of power that comes with freedom. Freedom is you have the power and the ability to make decisions based on the best benefit for yourself. When you're inside those cages and everything, people have to decide what they want you to do. They decide when you can do it. They decide how much of it that you can do. And so when it comes to those type of situations, it's difficult to say that you're free. But also we know that freedom is a state of mind that leads to a state of existence, which means the more that you think about being free, the more that you act in a way that's free in accordance to the way your beliefs are and what you like to have to happen and see and vision in your life. As you begin to see those things, you travel down that path to become the person that you desire to become, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. When you decide, as you see yourself slowly deciding the person that you want to become, that starts to unlock your cage of existence. Even though you might be physically, stuck in between walls and fences and things of that nature, but as you start to grow and open up your mind and start to see yourself being the person that you were put on the planet to be, things get a lot more freer. They get a lot more better. Again, I always remember when I had the conversation with the brother Lamont McIntyre, and he told me when I was inside of prison after he got out and came back to visit us, and he told me to will myself out of prison. But basically what the brother was saying, although, as I've said in the show before, that I was really upset with him for saying that, because I was saying, man, I need a lawyer. I don't need all that stuff you talking about, that cosmic crap, but the truth is, until I aligned myself with being free, until I allow myself to become a free thinking person, before I allowed myself to say, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to be free, until I was able to sit back and really convince myself, and then take, acknowledge, and accept the fact that I was going to be free. It didn't matter how many lawyers I got. It didn't how much money, my family put forward, to make this thing happen. So anyway, let's go back a bit. Like I said, today is the day that I was brought to this planet. I was brought to this planet by two beautiful parents. And, Michael Bronson being my father and Linda Lewis being my mother. And they, raised me in some of the best ways and sent me to some of the better schools to help me to be able to develop into a good and righteous person that was, going to leave his name on this planet. So when I did a speaking engagement at KU, it was some younger students, but I did a speaking engagement at KU about a month or so ago. And one of the questions was, they asked me, they said, hey, if you had such a wonderful life growing up with good parents, both parents and having good parents or what have you, and you went to good schools, what is it that led you to crime? Why is it that you ended up doing crime? So to piggyback off that, I want to say this as well. When I told you before that one of my counselors, one time I had a mental health flip out or whatever, and one of the counselor ladies, as well as, and Sue Ellen Freed, she's a person from Reaching Out from within the organization that I spoke about. She asked me one time, first I'll get to her. She asked me, she said, hey, she told me one day, I think the third time I ever met this lady, little short lady, she looked in my eyes and she said, hey, you can be anything that you want to be minus your anger. So what she was telling me to do was, get rid of the anger, get rid of the negative thoughts of myself, stop bullying myself, and eventually I will be able to become who I wanted to be. And I thank her for that, Jewel, and for her giving that to me, because she was correct. Now, the second part of what I was saying was, I met a mental health counselor one time, and she asked me, she said, well, why are you're angry? You're here in anger management. What are you angry about? And so I started saying, well, I'm in prison. What you think I'm angry about? So I was kind of, still kind of sassy, had a little slick mouth. But anyway, so she said, no, I really want you to go back over the weekend. I want you to think about that and then report to me on Monday. What are you so angry about? And I think this is the reason I'm saying this. I'm not trying to make this just personalized for myself, but I understand, I believe that a lot of the reason why men and women who are incarcerated are so angry. Remember, anger is a secondary emotion. So what that means is there's always something up under the anger. You don't just wake up and just be angry. You don't just start off and say, hey, I'm angry or what have you. There's something that's underneath that caused you to be angry. And so what I found for myself is the reason why I was so angry those first few years, because, eventually my anger, it tethered off. I began to, be more cordial, and I being, more polite, and I start to calm down. I wasn't so upset about things. But one of the things that angered me the most when I deal with the lady asked me to do the thought about it, the reason why I was so angry was because, and hear this, because this is really what the message is about. I didn't have to go to prison. So when those young students asked me, one of the young students asked me, why did you go to prison if you had, such a red carpet laid out for you? And the thing is, when we get to certain ages as teenagers, we want to make our own decisions. Our parents don't know nothing. Whatever they talking about is old school. We don't need that. This is a new era time. And they don't understand. So let me add this part to it. There's a thing in psychology called terminal uniqueness. Terminal uniqueness. What terminal uniqueness is, and you also find this in the drug treatments as well. Terminal uniqueness is when a person believes in their mind and in their heart or in their spirit or what have you, that they are the only person that's gone through the things that they're going through. They're the only person that's having problems. They're the only person that has issues. And when you get to thinking like that, then you really can't get help from anyone outside of you, because you believe that no one understands what your situation is. No one really understands. And since you don't understand, it's difficult for you to care. So as we always say on this show, no one truly cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, if I already blocked out in my mind that nobody understands me because nobody's been through what I've been through, so that means nobody can care, then why would I listen to you? So the terminal uniqueness comes from experience. When you walk around and you see, like in prison, You walk around. Now, prior to me going to prison, I thought that way. I thought nobody understood. I was in the worst position. I wanted to get this automobile. I couldn't get it to running right. I got to make some money. I don't want to ask my family. I'm struggling. I was addicted to drugs. I had a newborn child. All these things were going on. I thought to myself, nobody understands me. So I'm upset and I'm just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until I break through. Well, what I pushed into was a prison wall and I broke into the inside of it. But once I got in there and I saw that there were people that were less off than me when it comes to like education, when there's people less off than me when it came to having material items, having money on their books or whatever. When I started seeing that there were people in situations, when I listened to guys and I talked to them, older guys that even raised me and some of the backgrounds that they came from, I had to also learn while I was in prison. I used to speak about my father a lot because my father at one time was a street person and he transitioned into being, a retired business owner. So he made it out of the clutches and out of the grasp of this whole terrible negative incarceration thing. As we also say on the show, being in the streets can usually a lot of times, especially if you claim a gangster, can lead to two things, and that's either prison or jail. Ain't no 401k when it comes to being a gangster or what have you. But my father was able to make it out of there. And so one of the things that don't lose your thought. Come back. So, but anyway, so one of the things where he was able to make a better way for myself as well as, my children, the rest of my family, same with my mother. She came from, being in the household with family and eventually worked herself out through Southwestern Bell, and just been a worker, get herself out. But she pulled herself out of, 39th and Park where we, were raised at, which is not a very good neighborhood, but she was able to get us into something better. So there was really a point that I was trying to make, but I'm talking fast. I'm speaking, faster than I usually should or I could. And I just kind of bam. But the thing about it is we never usually truly lose thoughts. If somebody knows where I was going and wants to send me a little quick comment, I'll be love to try to get back on track. But still, so I think the point that I was trying to make was there's always going to be people that we consider to be lesser than us and greater than us. So by me being in a prison setting and seeing that there was other people that had, problems that I wish I could never have or wish I would never have, that opened my mind to say, you can't go around and think that you're the only person that has specific issues. Everybody goes through something, and sometimes it's compounded when you're dealing with, poverty-stricken people, or you're dealing with those that have even learning disabilities. So never think that yourself to be the worst, but never also consider yourself to be the best. There's an old wise man used to tell me all the time. He used to say, "Hey man, God looks out for children, small animals, and damn fools." And he said, "I fall in there somewhere." And so, but basically that analogy of what that means is, there's all kind of things that are given grace and stuff, but the person that has to get the most grace or that deserves grace is yourself. So if you go around thinking that you're the only person that has issues, the third person that has problems, it's difficult for you to move forward. So that's what I have to say about, terminal uniqueness. So again, come on in here if you have some stuff. Good evening. Hello. Happy birthday. Appreciate you very much. For the birthday wishes. I know there's many men that, inside of prisons and in different religions and cultures that say, man, we don't celebrate birthdays. Ain't birthdays. It ain't about, celebrating no birthday, because every day should be like we say Mother's Day should be every day. Father's Day should be every day too. But anyway, our birthday, every day we have an opportunity when we wake up to give ourselves another chance at this thing called life. So that's why we're using the quote. It's about living. It's not about the years. It's about the life that you have in them. But you cannot live. It's very difficult to live, very difficult to live when you're not free. So again, this is what this whole thing is about. It's not only about remaining free from the incarceration thing, but about becoming free as just a human being, even on the streets. So they have also a quote that I'd like to use. One of my life lessons, things I know, that's quoted a lot. If you knew better, you do better. But this is the truth. If you knew better about something, you should do better. If you know that you're in a situation that's not good or whatever, you should try your best to remove that. But I want to know and want to understand that a lot of times without the proper resources, but even the way. So I found that too. A lot of times we tell the youth or we tell younger people and everything, just stop doing what you're doing. Okay, so if you tell me to stop doing what I'm doing, what is there for me to do? So when we create these programs, which we hope to do someday soon, not only can we give the ills or the bad parts of things, you also have to show somebody, if you get into like I don't even want to keep using the term religion, but if you get into a situation of life, a philosophy of life that only tells you about the negativities of it, negative, 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 don't, can't. This is what builds a rebellious spirit. So if you're always saying can't, but you don't show me can, that's kind of like cruel, what do you call it? Cruel, unusual, inhumane punishment, or cruel, unusual punishment is what they call it in prison. But I'm talking about for life. That's kind of inhumane. I believe it was Malcolm X or one of the brothers that said too. Oh, it was Malcolm. He said, it is cruel and unusual for you to tell a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps who doesn't have boots. So there's a whole big lesson in that. But if you really pay attention to it, how are you going to tell me to go and do something if I don't know how to do it? How are you going to tell me to do something, but you want to instruct me how or teach me how? You just push me out and tell me to do it. Sure, birds and animals of the wild, they just kicked out of the nest or whatever and just have to, bend and learn for themselves. But a lot of time with the influences that we have, especially I'm speaking again about the younger generation, if you see, your only influence, you get kicked out of the next, and your only, influences, the negativities of the streets, hustle game, or what have you, then, hey, it's just a terrible way to live. So we also want to offer solutions. We want to be solutionaries here. We want to be able to find ways that we can give back to someone to help them, to show them the better ways of things versus just tell them what they can and can't do. If you show me hell all the time, how can you expect me to pay attention to heaven? If all I get is hell with no heaven, without you showing me heaven, then why would I want to go to heaven? Only thing I'm trying to do is get out this hell. I got to get out this hell before I can even consider heaven. So we'll continue with more of that later too. So this show basically today, questions been asking me over and over because of the fact that it is, the day of my birth, 57 years later, born in 1969. How is it like celebrating holidays and birthdays while incarcerated, while as a captive, while in prison? So again, as I was saying earlier, a lot of men don't celebrate birthdays, whether it be for religious purposes or because how is it that I can say and be proud of a celebration for the day that I was born when I'm stuck into this hell? It's very difficult. So during my stay, while I was incarcerated, every year without fail, every year my family members, specifically my mother would make cards. She would take pictures of, hey, this is the family, this is what we're doing. She would even basically, in so many words, have a little celebration for me at the house, film it. I mean, it wasn't big like, a party, nothing, but film it pretty much with the pictures of people saying, hey, happy birthday, and send that to me. And when they come into the prison, I mean, this is just like, looking, it's great. But that's what I was going to say earlier. I speak about my family and my parents in such a way that, I want to always try to, glorify them in the fact that they, have done a lot of work in on me. But I also remember me talking about my father and my mother, my upbringing and my family while in prison, and it making people jealous. It was making those unfortunate that didn't have those people, that didn't have a father or didn't have a mother. I remember a guy asked me one time, he said, I think around my birthday time, I received some money or received something, everything. So he said, man, you think you better than us because you got both parents, And so for years I would be, careful about me saying things about my family and about my friends, not because I just wanted to protect them, because I didn't know who it might offend. But then I got to realize on later and stuff, you have to be careful of who you share it with, no doubt. But I'm not going to sit back and be upset I'm not going to, I'm not going to decrease the joy that I have from having a wonderful support system and family because another person doesn't. See, sometimes that's what happens in life too. We have to put a light over our face or put dirt on our face or whatever to cover up the joy that we might have because it may offend someone else. Now, I don't know the full speech of the inauguration speech of South African president. Why is this escaping my freaking mind right now? Somebody put it on the screen. Brother man, long journey back, went to serve prison, got out, became a freaking. Anyway, this is terrible. But that's how the wine works. So Brother Man President, when he was inaugurated, when he got out, South African president, why you can't say this brother's name? You're looking right at his face. Winnie Mandela. Okay, Winnie Mandela. That's why I had to think about the wife in order to get the husband. When Nelson Mandela was released and he did his inauguration speech, he said, you're not sharing with the world or putting, and this is a paraphrase, you're not helping the world out or benefiting the world any by hiding your light. You have to make your light shine in order for other people to make their light shine. So that's another thing. A lot of times, they have the crab in the bucket theory. Some guys get to seeing you, living and trying to enjoy life or what have you. And because they may not be doing it at that particular time, they want to pull you down. And so a lot of times, myself included, I did allow some of the thugs and people that I ran with, to pull me down deeper because I didn't want to, and it's not a bragging thing. I didn't want to outshine them because I didn't want to offend them. So I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I said, damn, if I go over here and take this job or whatever, but I've been hanging with these dudes, they see me working there, they're going to wonder, well, how do you get that job? And it'll cause a whole bunch of problems. So I would just not get the job because I don't want to be, labeled as somebody that's, a goody two shoes, somebody that may be, brown nosing or what have you with the officers. But because I had good character, maybe not around those guys, but a better character, it was seen by, officials. And they said, man, we're going to give this dude a trustworthy. We're going to trust this man to do this and that. And sometimes I tricked him or what have you and got into even more trouble. But the point is, don't dim your light. Don't dim your light. Don't put dirt on your face, as my brother Charlie Mills would say. Don't put dirt on your face because you want to disguise the happiness and the joy that you have. You have to live life. There's so many people. Last thing I read in America that's either on parole or probation, which is still another form of prison. If there's 3 or 4, nearly three, over 3 million of us that are the people that are incarcerated and everything, that's 3 million people and everything that need to shine. They need to see shine. Of course, there's some that will take a minute to get adjusted to that light because when you're in darkness and everything, sometimes when that light comes, I've been in the hole for, long time before, and you come out and everything, even for the brothers and the Mexicans and everything, you stay in that hole for so long, you come out and your skin, it could be summertime outside, but in that hole, it's always wet and dark and cold. So when you come out and everything, your skin color may change. But again, when you come out that door and you have to look out and look around, these modern prisons are maybe a little different or what have you, but you got to have your eyes just to the light. Well, sometimes you have to be the light in darkness. So if we knew better, we would do better, but a lot of times we don't know better. So we have to make sure that, studying knowledge is the most, that's your passport to freedom. You have to understand stuff. You have to learn stuff. You have to know stuff. So basically, again, this show was about me just giving some of the life lessons, some of the things that I have. You see that I don't have on my Con-crete University shirt today and everything. I'm just wanting to, or what have you. Plus I was running a little late anyway, too. So anyway, back to the birthdays and the holidays in prison. These are rough times. There's many of the holidays that I do not celebrate and will not celebrate. But specifically when it comes to the time of Christmas, we understand that there's a spirit that comes with Christmas. Whether you believe in Santa Claus, whether you believe in whatever it is that you believe in, whatever city, state, or town that you're in, the way that the commercialism works and the way that the whole, ambiance is created for that time of year, there's a joy. It's kind of, you have to be really a true bah humbug type person to not be able to feel some of that spirit that comes with that. And I'm just talking about a big spirit. I'm not trying to get into some, religious debate about what the spirit is, but you know what I'm talking about. There's an ambience of joy. There's an ambience of happiness that comes not only for children, but also for adults. Well, inside of a cage, inside of that, you don't have that ambience. You don't get to see, the little kids happy and glee. Now, of course, they have visitation periods around that time or whatever. But, because it's the holidays, that means they're usually short staffed. So a lot of things that you would normally do on a normal basis, when the holidays come, you get to do less of it. So that's one of the first things. Again, for those who don't have supporters, that's a downtime for you too. You see other guys are getting, little Christmas presents or whatever. Now, in my earlier days of going in prison, they used to allow your family to send in what's called a care package for your Christmas thing. So they get to weigh, your food. I mean, you can have food items or whatever, as long as it wasn't some kind of object that could be, detrimental to someone else or pass the security of a prison. Because definitely, they're going to X-ray with everything. But they would allow you these packages in to come in and say, hey, this is what my family wanted me to have. long as long as it was amongst, against the, the rules. I mean, not against it, as it wasn't against the rules of what the prison would allow you to have. We got these packages. I used to get them from, a couple of different states or what have you. And so still thank you for that, and when those boxes come in, you got one, and here it is, you live in a cell with someone else that didn't get one. That kind of puts a damper on yourself, especially if you're not a sharing person. So you got to deal with that, dang, now my Christmas is dampered or whatever the holiday may be, because here it is, some person that's without, and now I have to share some of my stuff with them. I hope that you're not that type of attitude or person that, gets into that, not sharing things, too short of a day to be greedy. But, so that's one of the things, seeing others that don't have, as well as those that do have, having to, do this thing. But another thing too about, prison is, you have people that are in there that will remind you not to be happy. There are people in prison that will remind you, hey man, you having too much time to be locked up. But this is about life. You're a human being, or you're a person, wherever it is that you go, whether it's overseas, underwater, on another planet or whatever, you still have to be you. So there was a lot of time that, I remember having a visit with my mother once, and I got to laughing. And when I laughed, I got to covering my mouth when I was laughing. And so my mother said, why is it every time that you laugh, you cover your mouth? Why do you keep doing that? I spent too much money on the orthodontist and everything to get your teeth straight. Yeah, I kind of messed one up in the fight right here. But anyway, I spent too much money for you going to an orthodontist for you to keep on covering up your mouth. And why you do that? And so the truth of the matter was, it was just, some guys and everything that get offended by your happiness. So, sometimes dudes will laugh and they cover their mouth. This is a prison thing. Surely no one does this on the streets, but that became one of the things, because I do have big teeth, and people thought I smiled a lot. I just got big teeth. And it's like, man, you always smile. You always smile. I ain't smile. I just got big teeth. And so because of me not wanting to offend anyone by smiling so much when I was having a good day or what have you, I started to, kind of make sure that, people didn't see that. That's an inhumane and terrible way to live. When you have to hide your joy, when you have to hide your happiness because you don't want to offend someone else, that's pretty not good in my opinion. So I'm probably going to have an issue with that later. So with that being the case, again, it's about having life in your years. Another thing about the holidays is, because there's so many different cultures and factors inside of prisons, everyone serves or does whatever religious holiday it may be differently. Like for the Muslim, they do Ramadan. The Jews, they have the Jewish people, or the Hebrews or whatever, they do their thing. You have Hanukkah, you have all these different, of course, with the Catholics, they have, certain saints day, but you have all these different religions that's going on all in one different place. So another thing about that is, when there's certain holidays, for those, again, like, didn't get into the commercialism of Christmas or whatever they call it, Xmas or what have you, you'd have scuffles and fights because, again, the unhappy would say, man, why you over there doing that Christmas stuff? You should have learned Santa Claus wasn't real, and then you have those that are, the religious zealots, for lack of better terms, say, this is the day for, this specific saint, prophet Jesus, or whoever the case may be at that time. And there are issues where there are fights during holidays because someone always wants to disrespect. And I'm saying that, I don't like to speak, in general, to say everybody does this, people do this, that, because everybody's not the same, and everybody doesn't always do the same things. Although I know this, that when it comes to people that are unaware, and this is another reason why we do this show, are unaware of what goes on in prisons. They say all prisoners do this, all prisoners do that. If they're in prison, they do this. In prison, but if they got caught, there's a suspect. They said they will do anything. They'll lie, cheat, steal, and kill all day long. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. That's not true. You have some very, very, very good people, very wise people inside of those places, but it's difficult. Like I'm saying, here it is. You could have a wise man or a person that's, really deep into the traditions of specific religions, whether it be Easter, Valentine's Day, or what have you, which I'll get to in a second, or what have you, and they can't even practice that correctly. There are very, like I said, scholars of religion inside of prison and everything, but it's difficult to even practice some of the tenets of your religion based on the cave, based on being locked up. A brother asked me, Brother Lonnie Johnson and everything, I remember once he asked me, how's your faith, or what have you. And so I'm saying it's very difficult. I mean, not that it doesn't happen, and I had to use mine in order to get through, but it's very difficult to hold your faith in a situation that's like, hopeless situation. Like, God dang, man, where is what I'm looking for? Where's my blessing? Where's my relief or what have you? But anyway, there are very strong men and women inside of prisons that are, spiritual as well as religious, that do use that spirituality, that life force inside of themselves to pull themselves through. And I give, props to them and everything. Valentine's Day. I'd like to speak about Valentine's Day. And, because we passed February, what have you. But how romantic could it be if the person that's your significant other, your loved one, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, how do you think that would be if your loved one is in prison and you're trying to celebrate Valentine's Day? How do you think it is vice versa? If you're in prison and you got this person that you're in love with, Cupid didn't hit you with his little bow and arrow or what have you, and you love and care about this person so much, and you want to reach out and give them a big old hug and maybe some candies or whatever, and the only thing you can hug are some steel bars. Can you imagine that? So there's a lot of stuff that comes on. It's like with myself, again, like I'm saying, the last year on my birthday, which would have been, the first year of me being out, I chose to spend my birthday with my mother. My mother said, what is it you'd like to do? Myself and my mother went to see a movie called The Amateur. She had to text me and say, what's the name of that movie? But we went to see the movie. But it was just me and my mother together. And that was such a beautiful, wonderful experience and everything. And it's one that I would cherish. But it's just me and mom. So you know how many years and how many calendars went by that she was not able to spend time with her son. Of course, she can come and visit me or whatever. So these are things that we need to think about, and share with these young ones when they go inside these prisons. You really get the time, miss your time, family, New Year's Eve, you want to get with your family, everybody's starting a new year in. And so we don't even get to see fireworks. I mean, if you had a cell or whatever that had a window that was, facing towards somebody in a town that you may have been in that shot off something, you'd be able to do that. So the point is, this is not about, talking about people's traditions. This is not about saying, hey, you got to celebrate this more and do that more, but it's about living life. So if you're on the outside, I'm sure that you are from, being a part of this, live your life to the fullest, try to get the best out of it. Remember, every single day is an Earth Day, or every single day that you have above water or you have above ground is a day that should be celebrated. We got many brothers and sisters now that say grand rising. For you to be born, for you to be alive, for you to be able to just to take a breath, that's another day that you have an opportunity to make a better freedom for yourself and for others. So just remember these things. You got it from Dean XL. Be free. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your time on this planet. Enjoy your thoughts of the afterlife. If afterlife is what, you're into. And I'm not saying I'm for or against either way. That's not what this show is about. But whatever it is that you can put forward, again, when we're talking about life lessons, I think that what I understand about life and life lessons, and I'm just a young man, so there's still more growing that I need to know. But one of the life lessons that I've tried to got a grasp on everything, every person, again, I'll say this many times, and I don't mean to be redundant, but sometimes you have to repeat things over and over for some of us to be able to grasp it and hold on to it, myself included. Life is about living up to your highest potentials. When you were put here, whether you believe in the Big Bang Theory or whatever you believe in creationism, when you were put here, you came to this planet with specific gifts, specific talents, specific whatever. I think that is hell, and I've watched many men go through this, when you're unable to live up to who you're supposed to be. When you have potential to do something, I've met guys inside of prison, and I know of at least two where sports teams have come into the prison and got these guys, and this is way back, and took them out of the prison because of their potential or their someone on the inside saw them and knew how good they were. Back in the day, they used to get boxers, and other, athletes out of prison in order for them to be able to go and play, on a sports team or whatever. But it's a terrible tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy when like I said, the number one thing that had me angry is because I knew that I didn't have to be there. I could have been well off, running a Fortune 500 company now, but that just wasn't in the cards for me. And I do thank the Creator. I do thank God. And I do thank my family, for me being able to learn all this stuff, because everything, like my mother always says, is preparation for when that time comes. And so that's why we have to take, whenever that door of opportunity comes, instead of closing it because we're fearful or whatever the case may be, you got to take them opportunities a lot of times, because again, If you miss those opportunities and you don't live up to your potential, you don't see yourself growing the way that you believe that you should grow, that's a travesty. That's what hell really is. Hell really is you knowing that you can do better, but you're not able to do better for whatever reason it is. And a lot of times that major reason is us. One of our biggest enemies many times is us. And so that's the biggest fight that we have to fight, whether you're incarcerated or not. So we're about to end this out. I know I did a lot of things differently. I still was waiting for people to come in to tell me what they thought about the question of last week. So I just guess we'll get back on schedule. Last time, like I said, it was an act of nature. Here's a little fun fact if you may not know this. In some states, it's on the books that if there's a tornado or there's some kind of natural disaster that happens and you're able to get outside the prison, they give you 24 hours to return yourself back into the prison. So because it's a natural disaster, they wouldn't charge you with the crime of leaving. They wouldn't charge you with, running away. You wouldn't be escaping because it's a natural disaster. But that's just something that you might want to, look into or Google. This is something I read many years ago in a law book or what have you. But because of natural disasters, it's free for you to go. So we had a natural disaster, which caused me to, be a little bit off this week. But stick with me and we'll be back next week. I'll give shouts out. I'll give links. I'll do all the stuff that we normally do. But I do appreciate you, that all the people, 20, 30 some odd people that wished me a happy birthday today, told me to have a good show. I greatly appreciate you. I try to reach out to many people that send in, messages and comments to me. I try to get them, all back, which can be, rigorous at times, but I appreciate the love and I like to give the love back. That's the only way that you can keep it, is to give it back. So I thank you, for all of that. But again, the final thing is, life. Life is about living. It's not just about struggling and surviving. Even when you have to struggle, there's always going to be some day when you get the chance to be able to survive. I sent out a reel the other day that was talking about, it takes both sunshine and rain in order to make a rainbow. And so this is very true. Verily with every difficulty comes relief. So it means anytime something is going bad on in your life that might be, traumatic to you or whatever, even inside of there's something in there that could possibly give you to the relief to what it is that you're having an ailment with or whatever trauma you're having. But if you don't search for relief, if we get into this thing like, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to continue to have a bad day because woe is me, it's a bad day, it's a bad day. Something is going on around you that may change your day from being bad to good, but you may not recognize it because you're so focused on the negativity or the bad thing that's happening to you. I remember there was an old lady inside of prison that used to say, sorry for calling her old, but anyway, she used to say, have a good day. And so, some of us hardcore. Man, nobody hear that every time we walk in there. You talking about have a good day. Ain't nobody having no good day and everything. She said, okay, well, then make a good day. Instead of saying have a good day, make a good day. Well, I'm saying that we have the power to be able to make the ability to have a good day if that's what we so choose. So choose to have a good day, choose to have a good life, continue to stay with me. We thank you for your comments, but we need you to share. We need you to, repost and all the other little technological names that we do. It's easy to find me. And Con-crete University, I must reiterate again, this is not just about me. This is not about me just running my mouth because, many of you know that I can do that. But I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, love to, help others. And I believe that part of it comes from me being an only child for so long. I have a beautiful sister, Lindsay, that was born after I was incarcerated, as well as my sister, Alexis. But this came after my incarceration. But prior to that, I was an only child. And so one of the things that I learned was in order to have those to be in your company, you got to treat people right. I used to love when my family members would allow me to have, company. You can have some company today, let you have company. I just enjoyed that so freaking much because, being by yourself, it can be a struggle even when, you're a young person. So again, please forgive me. I'm trying to get this thing right and we'll close out. But thank you for everything and all of those who support me. And let's continue to do this. Con-crete University is not just about, talking about prison all the time. It's pretty much about finding solutions to those on the outside. So I'm connected to a lot of groups through this chat, through this live stream that give me a lot of stuff. Okay, they're trying to tell me Facebook.com. We're not doing that this week. We'll do it. if this was the one show that allows you to not be able to connect with us, then so be it. Whatever, it's out there. People are calling me and letting me know a lot of time. Man, I'm trying to look up some dang swimming trunks and whatever. Now your face pop up on there, drinking a Slurpee or some crazy stuff like that. So it's out there. We'll be able to get to it. I know my engineers and I know my core 3 are gonna be mad. Why you didn't say all that stuff? Why you didn't put that out there? And everything? Hey man, we're just doing a live stream. It's called live, so we just gonna go live. We just do what we do, and hope to see you the next time. And if not, maybe there's something that you can have that we'll look up and be a part of what it is that you part about. No love lost. It's all about saving those who can be saved. Thank you for your time again. From DNXL Be Free, better known as Daryl H.W. Lewis. Thank you for the birthday shouts again. I appreciate you. But it's time to tune out.
Yeah.
Check it out.
It's Con-crete University. Know before you enroll. Ended up in the penitentiary. Listen up to DNXL Be Free. And you will know before you go. Never have to see how prison can really be. Listen, learning, practice, consistency. This is prison literacy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is prison literacy. Yeah.